from Stillwater that I'd never heard of. As I began reading old editions of this paper, it became clearer how rare, how informative, and how poignant this publication was. Not just what the paper was covering, but who was writing it. It's like any small-town Minnesota newspaper, coverage of community events, local commentary, sports, recipes, and puzzles. But this paper is produced solely by prisoners.
First-degree murder.
First-degree murder.
First-degree murder.
Meet the current editors of the Prison Mirror.
Essay class is going to be a 2-page spread.
The longest continuously running prison paper in the U.S. Written, edited, and designed by inmates for the last 130 years.
I didn't really understand the gravity of it until I got up here and was looking through the archives, and it was like, wow, 2017, that's a long way from 1887.
There's a lot of lore and mystique behind it.
In its first edition, August of 1887, the founding members state their mission: to shed a ray of light upon those behind bars. 3 of the original paper financiers were members of the infamous Jesse James gang. Brothers Cole, James, and Robert Younger collectively gave $50 to help kickstart the paper.
They were captured shortly after the Great Northfield Bank robbery. And they, in a plea bargain to avoid from being hung, they were eventually sent to the territorial prison north of Stillwater. And through all this process, they helped form the paper.
From there, the publication has survived the decades, covering women's suffrage and labor strikes of the early 20th century, to the infinite number of war strategy experts sitting behind bars during World War II, to the deadly A-block rampage of 1975, to the first Prison Mirror computers in the 80s.
I came to this prison many years ago, and I remember always reading the paper, and I always like, man, do those guys live here? You know, we get in the paper. And then finally I recognized that, oh, that's that guy down the galley from me.
The Department of Corrections recently reformed its policy on cameras inside the prison and agreed to allow interviews of the editors of the paper as long as we didn't reveal their identities.
The population who we make the paper for, this is the kind of, they view this as their outlet to be heard and kind of want to see things that are important to them.
Maybe for you journalists outside, you go digging for stories. Well, we don't go digging for stories because that's almost like a breach of privacy in prison.
The dynamic of an inmate-run paper in a place where they have no control is rather complex. The editors say the content starts with what interests them and the greater population of the 1,600 inmates. But they walk a tight rope, not to offend any offenders, and not to upset the guards or administration.
For the layout process.
And ultimately, the warden signs off on every monthly edition. So are there concerns of censorship? Yes.
Definitely. Definitely.
We allow them to a certain amount of editorial freedom to discuss about if we're making policy changes, how that will affect them. To that end, it has to be done in a respectful and in a positive manner.
The average sentence length in Stillwater is 8 years, according to the assistant warden. The number of inmates serving life, about 14%. Mistakes have been made. That's why they're there. But life does not stop, nor will it, if and when they get out.
And it's not that everybody behind prison is just stuck inside their cell banging their head against the wall. There's a lot of intelligence behind bars and a lot of people that can help others.
96% of all offenders get released. So what are you going to do? You're going to stick them in a cage, in a box, and you know, treat them roughly, and then all of a sudden expect them to come out and not return to whatever ways got them incarcerated?
So it's not amazing that talented people commit terrible crimes. But it is amazing that talented people have gravitated towards this publication inside this level 4, level 5 security prison and made this thing run for 130 years and kept it interesting and funded, and people all over the country subscribe to it.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating. One of the writers wrote a book called The Riot, which turned into a movie with Gene Hackman and Jim Brown.
Wow, that's incredible.
One of the editors back in the day, yeah.
Huh, incredible story.